Hello and welcome to Stalwarts of Music with Aditya Veera, Season 2. Today's episode is being powered by Perpetual Buzz Experiences. They are an artist representation company with three very basic but lofty goals. They're the launchpad for indie artists, helping them leverage success in the best possible manner. They also help fund social causes and make sure that people have a good time throughout the process. So be sure to check them out on www.perpetualbuzz.com. Speaking of my guest today, he's none other than Scott Kinsey, who's a renowned electric jazz keyboard master with very rich musical history and numerous accolades. After graduating from Berklee in 1991 with a bachelor's degree in piano performance, he quickly rose to prominence in the electric jazz fusion music space. He joined the seminal fusion band Tribal Tech and became an integral part of its most enduring lineup. He also has his own band, the Scott Kinsey Group, and a series of other interesting projects. One of the most significant associations in Scott Kinsey's career was his longtime friendship and mentorship with the legendary jazz icon Joe Zawinul. Until Joe Zawinul's passing in 2007, Scott Kinsey produced Joe Zawinul's 2002 release Faces and Places and continues to honor his legacy through the Zawinul Legacy Band. Here's a fun fact for a lot of Indian listeners. This gentleman has worked with the one and only Arijit Singh. He's performed with Maestro Gino Banks, Ranjit Barot, and has worked on the iconic Matters of the Heart album by Sandeep Chauta. He shares a very special connection with our country. So without any further ado, I'm delighted to welcome my guest for today, Scott Kinsey. Hi Scott, namaste. Welcome to Stalwarts of Music. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, it's great to be here.
What are you doing on Saturday? Is it Saturday morning there?
Yeah, it is. It's 10:30 a.m. on Saturday.
Uh-huh.
You know what? I'm not really doing anything right now, to be honest.
Okay.
Just kind of getting ready for for the interview, actually.
Oh wow. Such a pleasure to have you on the show once again. And I have a couple of very interesting questions as part of our agenda today.
Oh,
So shall we get
okay.
started?
Sure.
All right. In the vast expanse of soundscapes, where did the seeds of your musical intensity first take root and begin to flourish?
Hmm. Um, well, I guess when I was a little kid, my dad was is a my dad was a piano player, and he was in radio for a living, but he was also a piano player.
Oh, lovely.
And yeah, and so he would always um go to this local music store. So it wasn't really local, it was about an hour and a half drive from where we lived, but he would go there, and then eventually he would take me with him
Okay.
to go to this music store. It's called Arnold Williams Music. It's been gone a long time, but it was a great music store in Canton Township, which is just outside of Detroit. And we would just go in there and look at all the keyboards. And that was already a really interesting thing because I mean, I couldn't afford any of them, but it was so cool because the really key instruments were already out. Like, the Roland Jupiter 8 was out, the Prophet 5 was out, there's some certain Oberheims that were out. And I would just go in there and play them.
Hmm.
And I mean, I remember the first synthesizer I ever touched was a Mini Moog, of course.
Oh, wow.
And the guy set it up for me just for a basic patch, and I touched one button and it went completely bonkers. And I just thought, okay, I like this. You know what I mean? This is kind of like I can see something in this works for me. So I think that was an early seed. My dad would get like whatever drum machines were out at the time, or he would, bring home a different keyboard every once in a while. He had a very early Rhodes, which he customized with special speakers. And to this day,
Uh-huh.
if a Rhodes feels sounds right, I can smell it. I can smell that Tolex smell from when I was a kid. And I mean, these are little things, but I feel like they're important. Somehow they're important. Uh, music wise itself, he was into all kinds of music and would turn me on to those recordings when I was a kid. The whole basement of our house was a stereo room,
Oh wow. Okay.
so yeah, I mean the whole thing. So he had many reel-to-reel recording decks, and he would just update all that stuff as technology improved, but he would always have the best sounding stuff. And he had a lot of microphones, and he wasn't into multi-track recording. He loved stereo recording. That was his thing. He really liked stereo recording. One time he recorded a little bit of the Count Basie Orchestra when they came through our small town in
Hmm.
Michigan. I grew up in a small town called Owasso, Michigan. It's right in the center of the state.
Okay.
And and I want to say one other thing about that, because I think people sort of assume, if you're from a small town, that that's going to work against you. But in a way, I really don't think it did. And in a way, I think it maybe even helped me, because, and it's weird, it's counterintuitive, but I feel like there was so little culture and so little going on in that town that I had to generate all of it. I had to generate whatever was going to happen within me. I had to generate it. It was my own curiosity about keyboards. It was my own curiosity about music. Um, Finding a couple of key songs or pieces of music at that time were important, because it guided me. It took my direction somewhere. But I feel like because I wasn't being inundated with, oh, this is your culture. This is who you are. Hey, you're Indian. You have to like this Indian stuff. You have to like the tabla thing. You got to like this. You got to like that. Or you're from Japan. You got to like the, whatever. I didn't have that. I felt like I was completely neutral culturally. So I could look at every culture. I
Hmm.
could look at every sound from every culture and take little bits and pieces of what I liked and what turned me on. I mean, I love jazz, but I also love a lot of other stuff. And
Sure.
as I heard it little by little, I could just take little bits and pieces of it, just, eventually for myself. I really didn't realize that I was doing that, but that's basically what I was doing. So you said, like, what got you going, or what started you off, or what, little pieces did you find that helped guide you? I really feel like in a way that's a big part of it. Like the lack of culture in Owasso, Michigan was kind of important, weirdly.
It's incredible how diverse you are with
Mm.
the number of collaborations that you've been open to, and you must have been
Hmm.
very fortunate to have some of these opportunities align and bring you to a certain point, which is marvelous. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I feel like I am
Yeah.
fortunate. I'm a fortunate person. I mean,
Yeah.
um, of course, not everything goes your way in life, but I mean, I feel like I've been able to do pretty much what I want to do.
Okay.
And I mean, I don't think a lot of people can say that. I mean, I don't do gigs I hate. I don't play on stupid tours that it would make me miserable. I don't do any of that. So yeah, I do feel fortunate because I can kind of do my own thing and kind of do my own band or participate in projects that I believe in or that I like. Um, Pretty much that's all I do. Once in a while, I'll do something just because, okay, yeah, every once in a while you really need money or something, But basically, I'm able to do only the things I really love.
Incredible. You've been described as a major influence on the direction of tribal tech, right?
Mm.
Allowing the band to jam freely and throw away chart music. So, how did you develop
Mm.
this ability to create such spontaneous and organic music within the group?
Mm. Well, yeah, I mean, I think um, I definitely wanted to personally, I wanted to go in that direction more, because I felt like for a band of four people to discover what it is or who it is, you have to not be confined by pre um preconditioned or pre whatever. I mean, ideas that like one guy has that says
Preconceived
you're gonna
notions.
play this, and you're gonna
Yeah,
play this, and you're gonna play
yeah,
that, and this is how the tune goes, and this is because we started off like that, which was cool. I mean, it's great
yeah,
because you got to start somewhere. I feel
yeah.
like that was really hip, but as we kept doing gigs, and you know what? I think it came out of sound checks because Kirk and I would kind of jam at the beginning of, I mean, once we were on gigs, working every night, we would jam on our sound checks, and then like little by little, Willis would start to jam with us, and
Hmm.
then even Henderson would jump in, and we would have a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think they started to realize, hey, man, this is kind of cool. I mean, we did gigs sometimes which were completely improvised, like well, not
Wow.
one song.
Okay.
We pulled it off somehow. I mean, that's hard to do, but we were able to do it, and pretty successfully, like night after night. So, I mean, yeah, it started off as a small thing on sound checks, and then developed into like a direction for the band. Because then we did two two full records. We did Thick and Rocket Science, which were completely improvised from beginning to end. And then kind of what we did, because you're making a record, you can't have excuse me, you can't have a record with no melodies or something, right?
Hmm.
So we kind of went back and composed after the fact, but we started those whole records out completely just jamming. And then we would listen to the recordings that we made, and hey, there's a tune there. There's a tune there. Oh, so we develop it a little bit, and then there you go. And then X was the final one, which or 10, which was the final record. About 10 years after we stopped playing, we came back and just did X, just in a way, just for the hell of it. But I really think there's some nice music on that record too.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, completely improvised. Even tunes like what's that? Uh can't remember. Was it called Palm Moon Plaza? It's like a very harmonic piece,
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of stuff going on. I mean, all of that was it's just completely improvised. We didn't go back and change the chords or anything. Only thing we did is maybe add bass to something I
Hmm.
had played. Like if I put something in my left hand to change the harmony or something, maybe we might add bass to make that a real change. Something that he couldn't have seen coming. You know what I mean? But yeah. So yeah, anyway, that's what we ended up doing. I think it was kind of cool. I think it was unique for a band like that. But you know what? I always thought that like Weather Report did that. And I don't know if they did. I mean, I
Hmm.
got to know Joe, but I never really got to ask him certain questions. Um, just because he would kind of get mad if you asked questions. He just wanted you to hang and be there and just be a part of the thing, but not really probe. So I didn't really get to ever ask him, hey, did you guys just ever just, you know, group improvise? I'm sure they did. In fact, I think like a tune like Brown Street off of 830 was probably just a jam, just an improvised jam. So they did it for sure. But I always imagined that Weather Report did stuff like that all the time, and so that's why I felt like, yeah, we have to be able to do that, and we have to, be able to put ourselves in this position where we're just going to see what happens. I mean, sometimes they'd be awful, right? I mean, sometimes,
Hmm.
occasionally, they'd be terrible. But hey, that's the risk you take. That's the chance. You have to put yourself on that line and say, okay, we're just going to see what we get, you know?
Since you mentioned Joe, I'd like to understand, having worked with him closely, becoming his protege must have been an incredible experience. So, how did your relationship with him influence your musical journey, and what lessons did you learn from him that you carried forward in your personal artistic expression?
Right, yeah. Well, first of all, yeah, it was an unbelievable experience to be able to be there. I got to meet Joe strangely over a kind of like a lighting situation. My friend worked for a lighting store, and I was meeting with him once in a while, and he goes, "Hey, man, every time around now I go out to Joe's and decorate his Christmas tree. You want to come?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" So sure enough, like I was out there decorating his outdoor Christmas tree. The next thing I knew, and I didn't want that meeting to end, so I asked a couple questions. He invited me inside. He was super cool, and he was just like, "Hey, I mean, I asked him about something about a vocoder, and he just got stuff out and started showing me everything." And that was incredible. And little by little, we became friends. And little by little, I started working with him. So I started, working on various productions. And at one point, he was ready to do a studio record. So because they were just moving back to LA, the studio was not built, so
Hmm.
Ivan was working hard on building the studio and designing it, and Joe and I were actually in the office actually starting the record. So it was really an amazing experience to be sitting there. I had always imagined like this must be like, how did they do it? How did he do it? What like way back, I was listening to one of the records and I'd go like, is that a melody or is that an improvised line? And later on I'd hear it again. I go, oh my God, that's a melody, but it's not obvious,
Yeah, yeah,
it I love those type of things. And so to be sitting there in the office with Joe actually working on the record was kind of mind blowing.
hmm.
I never thought I would ever get that opportunity, and it was truly an incredible education. Um, just to see, like, how does this come together? How does this happen? And yeah, so I mean, I've taken a lot of things I learned, and I also contributed things to that record. It's called Faces and Places. I also contributed a
Yeah.
bunch of things to that record. I'm really proud of, that I brought to Joe's table. I felt like that's really cool. I can not only be here and assist him, but I can actually offer things. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? That are, you know, it was incredible, and he was open to that, and I loved that too. Super open guy. He goes on one thing I brought in. He goes, man, if I put that in, no one's gonna listen to my keyboards, and I'm like, okay. And then, but he put it in because he realized, yeah, it worked. So he was an open guy. He realized that if something worked, it didn't matter who brought it in or who did it or whatever, whatever. If it worked, it worked. So yeah. And I also did. I mean, I did some tuning of things. Like oddly enough, like there was one tune where the bassist Etienne, he didn't know the song, but he had to leave. He had to go. So he played the song as if he knew it, but he played no notes that actually worked. Right. So I went back and I took that bass track and basically conformed that bass track to Joe's left hand.
Okay.
Little by little, I went through every note and I made it do something that worked with what Joe was playing his left hand. So suddenly that bass track was like from God. It was like, oh my God, man, he nailed everything. Stuff like that. It was really fun. It was a very fun and creative project to be involved with that final studio record from Joe. I mean, I didn't know it was going to be the final record. I would have thought Joe would live to be 100, but it didn't work out like that, sadly.
Yeah. But it's great. You're kind of carrying the entire legacy forward in your own inimitable style, and of course, like
Yeah.
I see a lot of those strands in your music as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, and I'm kind of like I kind of feel okay about that too, because while I want to continue Joe's legacy and his vibe and his ideas about music, I got to be myself too. And I really can't ignore who I am to just dedicate to someone else, even though whoever they are,
Yeah.
whatever that means to me. So I always want my music to sound like me and to sound like my music. But of course, I keep certain things that I always loved are always going to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that could be anything. It could be like rhythm conception. It could be harmonic things. I feel like that's one area where I got into, and it was always there, but I never did it. It's a funny thing. I always had
Mm.
this sense of harmony, but like I never used it. I used it very, very sparingly, if at all, hardly at all. And then I don't know why I wanted to kind of just, it wasn't that I wanted to keep it to myself. I felt self-conscious using it. It's weird. I don't know why. Maybe because you have to think more. I don't know. I just didn't want to go there. And then suddenly, I did this record where I just almost completely I just went that direction. You know, um, it was a record with Nana Kundu. It was this record called No Sleep.
Yep.
I
Yep.
wrote that record like that because I think because it was a pop record, but I didn't want it to feel like a pop record necessarily. I wanted to kind of divide. I wanted a little bit of a blurred line between what a pop record is and what a jazz record is. So I had all my friends and people that I work with typically on the record, and I also wrote all this harmony just to make it. Well, first of all, I knew that she liked that, so I wanted to do it partially because of that, but also just because I wanted to really make sure that you felt like, okay, this is not just a simple pop record. So I did. That was the first time I dived into it that much, and then I've kind of continued that ever since. And I've done that on records I've made for a lot of different people now. And but I'm more sparing with it. I'm more sparing with it until I did this record called Adjustments with Nana, with not with Nana, with Meredith Benny, and then on that one I kind of went full on again. But yeah, it's I feel like I forgot the question, actually.
No,
Am I veering off course?
no, I just wanted to understand what were some of the the key lessons that you had learned from Joe, from your personal interaction with
Hmm.
him, and how are you carrying the entire tradition forward in your own style?
Yeah, well, that's okay. So that I did get off the track. So,
Yeah, yeah,
well, one thing, I mean, I made this record um called We Speak Looney Wise, and that is a direct tribute to Joe. And on that record, I wanted it to be me, but I wanted it to be definitely a tribute to him. And so I mean that's one thing we did. And now I've actually I'm making, because I just did a tour for that record literally now, like 2023. I
hmm.
did the first tour for that record, which came out in like 2019, right? Because of COVID and everything that was going on, I couldn't
Yeah, yeah,
do it. I couldn't do it. So finally, I got a chance, and so we did this tour. And I did it with a similar band. I had Hadrian Furrow on bass, of course, Gergo Borlai on drums, and a guy named Patrick Bartley on, he plays alto sax.
oh, okay,
And that's interesting, because Joe worked with Cannonball Adderley for years and years and years.
correct.
And he's an alto saxophone player. And I think Patrick plays an incredible, first of all, he's an unbelievable musician. I mean, for sure. And he plays a lot like Cannonball. So I thought, well, that's a kind of interesting turn because, you can't, like, the Wayne thing is very mysterious and very difficult to kind of put your finger on. Nobody
Mm,
really plays like Wayne. So it's an interesting idea to say, well, what if Joe kept his electric thing going, but did it with Cannonball? I mean, what would that be like? So that's kind of like what we got into on that tour. Um, so and we played a bunch of different tunes that tunes we didn't do on the record. So fortunately the record was recorded um at least 4 or 5 nights. And so I just took one night, which was in Prague at the
yeah.
Jazz Dock. And I've been just working on it, mixing it and fooling around with it. And I think I'm gonna release that actually as a follow-up to We Speak Looney Wise. I don't know what the title will be, but I feel like it's a live version of Joe's music, which is again with the alto sax and with the way Gergo and Hadrian play with myself. It's like I feel like it's kind of a cool. I think it's a cool record. I think it's going to be a very cool record. It's very improvisational. It's very open. Um, but I feel like it's got that spirit to it, like almost of a record like Night Passage, which was kind of their most jazzy record, or their Port's most jazzy record. I feel like in a lot of ways, most just their playing, because a lot of that stuff was recorded live. So that's kind of what we did. So I have, yeah, so I have that next project. It's almost ready. I'm gonna do two studio cuts, sort of like what they did on when they made 830. It's a live
Mhm.
record, but one side of the four sides was studio. So I'm not gonna
Okay,
do it that much, but I'm gonna put like two songs on the record from the studio, and then the rest are just all live. So we did stuff like sightseeing. Um, we did oh, what did we do? Let me see here. Yeah, we did old tune like Walk Tall. We did a ballad called Can It Be Done. We
Hmm.
did another ballad called Dream Clock, which is beautiful. And Meredith sang on Can It Be Done as well. And then we played Young and Fine and Padilla. And so we did a bunch of stuff like that. And I think it's going to be pretty cool. I don't know when it's going to come out, but it's that's what's coming up. That's one thing that's coming up.
Really looking forward to it. Can't wait to hear.
Thanks.
Let's talk about your work in film soundtracks. You've contributed your
Hmm.
unique musical voice to the to some iconic movies like the Ocean's trilogy, the entire series, Smoke and Aces. So, how does the process of creating music for film differ from your work on your solo projects, or say with human elements? How is it? How is it
Yeah.
different?
Well, it's different, it's different. Again, I feel like I was fortunate to get involved in those projects. And I got involved with it because of my friend Steve Tavoloni.
Hmm.
Steve does a lot of movie work. He's a genius saxophone player, first of all, but he plays EWI, and he does an EWI is sort of like a digital saxophone. It's just a controller for modules and
Okay.
computers and things.
Okay.
Yeah, and so he works in that realm on the EWI in all kinds of films, tons of films. So this thing came up with Oceans, which was intended to be a very different type of soundtrack than a normal soundtrack. Um, and I think Steve just thought of me. So when David Holmes, the composer, came to Los Angeles and wanted to start working on it, Steve just recommended me right away. And so it was pretty much that simple. David hired me to come in and work with him. They had actually recorded a lot of keyboards already by the time I got there, but I guess he liked what I was doing a lot, and so he basically had me replace everything that the previous guy had done, which is I feel bad for him, but I was happy, because it was
Yeah.
I just did and I brought what I do into that, and I think
Yeah.
that's the coolest thing about it. I'm not just being a generic guy playing like generic keyboard parts. I really brought my way of hearing things and playing, and also with sound, I mean, because I'm so into synthesizers, although I didn't really play synthesizers on the score, I treated all those instruments like a synthesizer. If I played a piano, maybe I muted strings or I put something on the piano or I whatever. And if I played like a Rhodes, we always found it interesting, like a Benson echo or tape echoes or just things to make them different. I played a lot of Farfisa organ on it. And again, I didn't play it like anybody plays Farfisa organ. I'm not really saying that. I'm just saying it matter of factly. I just don't feel that I did. I just treated it more like a synthesizer. And therefore, we got a different kind of vibe, different type of sound. So that was a really fun experience. I almost kind of missed those days of, going in and, you know, playing something to like Julia Roberts walking down the stairs or something. That was really fun.
Are you working towards other projects in the movie realm at this point, or are you planning to
Not
take
really
up?
right now. Not really right now. I mean, I'm always up for doing it, but but not right now. I'm just really focusing on my thing right now. I'm also finishing up a new studio record. I'm calling it Thought Distortions,
Hmm.
and that's almost finished. I've just got a couple little things to record on that one, and that will be ready to go. And then this Savino live record I just finished, and then I'm working on a couple other projects also, and then I'll probably do Meredith's next record fairly
Okay.
soon.
Okay.
So that'll be the second record, or she goes by Marisol,
Yeah.
so I'll be
Yeah.
doing her
I'm aware.
record.
I've been listening to Tiny Circles for quite
Oh
some
yeah,
time now.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Huge fan.
yeah, yeah,
Great. Great.
yeah. I
Great
mean,
work.
that was a
Yeah.
really fun. That was a
Yeah.
fun track, and it was a fun video too because
Yeah.
we shot it in Bel Air, I guess it was in Bel Air, and then when we did Henderson's stuff, we went to his pad, and the
Mm.
first thing he says is, "Okay, I just want to have some fun with this," and we were like, "Eh." So he pulls leaves off the tree, and he's got one string that's just like,
Yeah.
not
Yeah. Yeah. I
hanging
did
out
see
the
that
guitar
too. Yeah.
practically. And then he's
Yeah.
playing like this, no matter what he's playing in the song. Like he's just going like
Yeah.
this. Like if he's playing lower in the song, he's playing up high. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm going like, okay, this is not good. I mean, I was thinking because I'm going like, it's just gonna be kind of ridiculous because we're all kind of taking the song seriously and he's making a joke out of it. But in the end, it worked out great. Actually, he knows what the hell he's doing, and I should
Yeah. Yeah.
remember that
Yeah.
because it worked out really well and it just gave it a lightness that it kind of needed, and it got a lot of attention actually because they're going like, oh, what are these leaf picks, and people kind of went off on that, and it was a lot of fun actually. Even though the song was kind of serious in nature, it didn't matter. It was still a really fun thing, and I'm really happy that we did it that way.
Yeah. I believe Scott is also working on some new music, and I from the last that I spoke to him, he mentioned that something's coming out in Jan. Are you involved
Yeah,
in
I
that
don't
as
know when
well?
it. Yeah, yeah. I don't know when it's coming out. I heard a couple of finished tracks the other day,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I gotta say, man, it's kind of unbelievable what he's doing. I mean,
Okay.
it's just every record, it's just 10 steps further. And he's such a perfectionist and such a, you know, he takes his time and just does everything right. And I think it's going to be incredible, incredible record. I'm going to play on it, but I'm only making like sound effects and things like that. I'm not playing notes
All
because
right.
I don't think he wants to confuse what's a keyboard and what's a guitar. It's all guitar, and then there'll be a
Okay.
few sound effects and stuff like that. But it's going to be really good, really good.
Can't
Yeah,
wait again.
almost shockingly good. Yeah, it's incredible.
Got it. As a master of sync orchestration, your sonic textures and loops add incredible depth in terms of your music. How do you strike the balance between preserving the spontaneity of live performances while also exploring the intricacies of electronics sound manipulation in the studio? How do you find the right balance between the two?
Huh. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you noticed that that kind of stuff happens. It's just it's just something that I've been doing for a long time, and I feel like it's almost second nature. And plus, I just get the best musicians, and when they play on stuff, they know what to do. Um, uh, but I've been combining loops and live drummers for, I don't know, 15, 20 years or something now on gigs.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when it comes time to record, I mean, I do the same thing basically. So, I mean, I just program basic loops. I try not to make them too busy. Um, and I just want to, I want the vibe to be very live, but with that little extra flavor that you can't get any other way.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be so live that it's just a drummer playing because that feels a little bit more traditional or old school or something. So I really do like to combine like a loop of some type. And I feel like that also helps put it in whatever direction it's going to go in. Like the loop will kind of define the vibe or the impression that you want to make. And then I get drummers like Gary Novak, who, when he
Yeah.
plays with a loop, you don't ever hear a flam or anything that gives it away. It just blends with the drum sound so perfectly.
Yeah.
And also Gergo Borlai can do that too. Both of
Right.
those guys have such good time that they make it seamless between the drums and the loop.
Hmm.
So, but I like doing the loop stuff because it also allows me to introduce other flavors and other vibes that aren't just loops. Like I can bring in vocal samples, I can bring in just all kinds of stuff that's time based, or even like little sequences of like, bass lines or little counter melodies or little odd lines or whatever have you. And I do it because I feel like that really, just makes the music more alive and more vibrant. And it gives me that vibe like I had when I first heard Weather Report, like when I first heard like a record like Sport and Life. That
Hmm.
record just pops off the stereo to me. It's so in the moment and live and yet electronic. I love it. And that I really always wanted to get that vibe. So when I did kinesthetics, that's what I was kind of going for. Like somehow that kind of cross between, programmed and live. And sometimes like, you do stuff to make it work. Like if a drummer plays fills, you kind of get rid of the loop at that point to
Hmm.
clean it up, or, just whatever you have to do. Sometimes I'll edit, you know, but yeah, I'm doing that more on my next record too. I think I'm always going to do that. It's just an element that I dig, and so.
Lovely. You've been praised for your ability to incorporate the human element into your synth work,
Mhm,
right? So using sampled vocals in some very
mhm,
expressive ways, right? So what inspired you to
mhm.
explore the approach, and how did you use this technology to achieve a sense of, say, human emotion and connection in your music?
Um, well, I always loved vocals and wordless vocals ever since I can remember. And I think meeting Arto Tunçbaşıyan was a big turning point because
Okay.
he is a guy who does that stuff. Like he's the guy who actually sings those phrases, and his voice can sound so many different ways. He can
Mm.
sound like a he can sound like someone in a children's choir, or he can
Yeah.
sound like a gruff, you know, old man, or he can
Mm.
sound like a very clear throat. Like, he's just got a million sounds just within his actual acoustic voice. So oftentimes I'll record him doing his thing, and then I'll do something with that later. Like, at the beginning of This Is That on Kinesthetics, the
Yeah.
bottle is Arto playing the beer
Okay.
bottle,
All right.
and then singing in between, so he'll sing a phrase and then he'll play the beer bottle, and it's this little stuff like that. I just really feel, I mean, I love that type of thing. Always looking for new versions of those type of things from the breath, or he'll even exhale and that's the sound or whatever. So I always love to take those little bits and pieces and just orchestrate with them, as well as I'm just playing keyboard sound, orchestrating with vocal sounds. So before I knew Arto, I would still do it, but I would take samples and find things, and I just look around. And I mean, I sampled a bunch of things for Joe too. Um, you hear him all the time on his later records. Just vocal things that I took off sample CDs, or that I sampled myself or whatever, or even his own voice I sampled, and he was using samples of his own voice too. So that's just an element that, I mean, I think I first heard it on records like Sport and Life, and where he had a ensemble. He had Bobby McFerrin there, and he had an ensemble of
Oh,
studio
good.
singers singing like ensemble things, and almost like the African background singers that Salif Keita
Yeah.
uses.
Yeah.
I don't have them, but I can do something, and I just do
Sure.
what I can
Sure.
do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
That'll be great. Yeah. Why not?
know.
It's very intriguing, like you rightly mentioned, to see that your artistry spans beyond just playing an instrument, right? You're involved in
Mm.
producing, you're involved in sound programming. So, how does your multifaceted skill set enhance your overall musical vision? And how do you approach each role to create this whole cohesive and very compelling musical experience for people like us?
Oh, well, I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, you know what? The bottom line is, being that way allows me to actually realize what I have in my head. I've got to do all of it. I've got to program sounds. I've got to produce. I've got to decide, like, I've got to record each musician. I've got to like go through samples. I've got to do all of it myself in order to get to what I'm hearing. If I depended on other people, I'd never do. It wouldn't work. It would never work. It's just the means to an end. And I feel like that's bad sometimes, because working with people is really important, and um you don't want to step on someone's toes. And I know I've probably stepped on a few people's toes before, not even in the actual music part, but just I don't know. I feel like in this sort of, you can have a little bit of impatience, like you want to just get to it. You don't want to like explain it, and you just want to do it. If you hear it, you just want to do it. So I feel like, I don't know. I feel like it's just a means to an end. It's just like I've developed certain skills, and just because I had to, you know, and I'm glad I did, because now I can do almost everything, and I can do almost everything pretty much alone if I need to. But of course, I love to bring in musicians, and I have the most fun that I have playing with other musicians every time. So, you know, but I feel like just that thing of being able to do everything, it's just so I can get to what I'm trying to get to.
Right on.
Now, if
Yes.
I didn't
So,
answer the whole question,
well, yeah, you did. You did
okay,
fairly well. Yeah, in terms of
okay,
emphasizing on that. Yeah, certainly.
yeah, okay.
In fact, your solo on "Send in the Clones," I think it was from the
Oh,
album
right,
"Superconductor."
Seamus Blake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It just displays masterful navigation and some very complex changes, right? So, how do
Mm.
you approach improvising over such very intricate chord progressions? And how do you maintain a melodic flow while exploring color tones and avoiding cliche licks?
Mm. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, that was one of the hardest tunes I ever had to play.
Okay.
Seamus is just, that's how he thinks, how he writes. And so I had to practice a lot to play that,
Mm-hmm.
actually, to tell you the truth. I didn't just sit down, and
Yeah.
I had to take, I probably did 10 takes of that solo
Oh,
before I got there.
my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, I had to start with like from wherever I, was playing it, and screwing up all over the place to get to the point where I could actually, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I see where this is going. I see what's happening. Now but it's just a matter of going through it and going through it, sort of, yeah, again, like you say, figuring out what are the common tones between two chords, what notes are changing. So it's an E flat here and it goes to an E natural, or, you know what I mean? It's really getting inside there and trying to figure out what's going on. And I made some notes too, like, oh, here you can play this scale or that scale, you know. Yeah, that was a very, very challenging piece, to be honest. Yeah. And then the sound that I picked was pretty unforgiving too, because there's no vibrato on that sound. And
Yeah.
I mean, now that I sort of feel like I should have picked a sound with a little bit more, that's a little bit of a flat sound. But it's okay. It was from like a Matrix 12. It's a beautiful synth, but it's just it was a little bit flat for that type of piece. But yeah, that was a hard one.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you also a collector? Do you collect a lot of gear?
Not really, no. No. I've got old instruments from my old days. I've got my original D70 Roland, and
Okay.
I think I've got my original Wave Station. Or I might have sold that, but I think I have it. I've got a rack one.
Hmm.
So those are like old keyboards. I've still got my EX5, which replaced the D70.
Right.
Um, I've still got I sold my Nord 1, my Nord Lead 1. I sold that, and I got a Nord Lead 2, and I
Okay.
still use it. It's still the Nord Lead of
Yeah.
choice for me.
Yeah.
It just got something, and I'm not talking about the 2X, because they made a one later called the 2X, which it's the 2. If that's got it. I don't know why, but it just does. Can't get rid of it. I've got a Nord Lead 4 also. So those keyboards are all kind of old now, but
Hmm.
still what I'm using. I use a Nord Stage 3 for my main keyboard, and the Nord Lead 2, or sometimes a Nord Lead 4 if I can do it. And now I'm fooling around with a couple new instruments. One from Expressive E called the Osmos is really interesting, and
Yeah.
another one from Nonlinear Labs called the C. Uh, it's what is it? The
Seaboard, Rolly.
C15.
Okay,
No,
okay. You're talking about
it's
seaboard.
a Nonlinear Labs. It's called the C15.
All
It's
right.
uh it's a very very interesting keyboard. It's very interesting.
Okay.
I haven't really recorded with it yet. I just picked it up, but it's gonna be really cool. And then yeah, I do have a Rolly Seaboard also.
Yeah, yeah.
I really didn't use it much, but I definitely have it and I pull it out once in a while when I really just want something completely different. It's just really hard to play. I mean, I can play it, but yeah, it's hard to play.
Yeah.
It's not as intuitive. And very difficult to see in low light too. And now I've got this, like, I got a little bit of an eye situation. My right eye got screwed up so it's even harder for me to see this stuff.
Okay.
So yeah. Sometimes it just comes down to practicality. Like, can I see it? No? Okay. I'm not going to use it.
Yeah. In one of your earlier interviews, you'd mentioned that some of your students, while you were at USC, uh, bring in some complex musical compositions, but they were not quite memorable, right? So, do you still hold
Oh,
on to
yeah.
that thought, or has it changed in like that period of time?
Well, I mean, I still sub for Vince Mendoza at USC every once in a while. Um, um, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's just my opinion about it. That's just how I feel about it. I feel like compositions, if you can't remember anything when after you hear it a couple of times, eh, I don't know. I mean, it's a good exercise, but it's just not for me. That type of tune isn't for me. Maybe for a certain type of jazz listener, they would enjoy that. Um, but yeah, it's just not for me. But I feel like that's what students do, and I mean, I'm the same way. You write something that's in a way beyond you, and then you see what's up, like, can the musicians play it? Do I need to work on it? What needs to happen? And that's a normal part of, you know, exploring music writing. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just ultimately not something that you would really necessarily want to listen to. That's just my opinion, though. That may
Okay.
not be anybody else's.
Okay. You've experienced a lot of ups and downs in the music industry, I'm sure, throughout your career. So, what's your assessment of the current condition?
Current condition, yeah, that's an interesting one too. I don't know what to make of it, to be honest with you. I've been doing this for a really long time. I
Yeah.
meet people all the time that have that don't know me and have not heard my music.
Okay.
And I feel like that's already interesting because they were just too young. You know what I mean? They were just too young. They weren't around. And the thing is too, when I was 20 something, right? There
Mm.
was no internet. We did not have the ability to reach everyone in 2 seconds. You depended on magazines. Well, now nobody reads magazines.
Yeah.
Nobody, things have changed so much.
Yeah.
It's a total social media based world now. So, but there are certain musicians that are really popular that are aware. And I mean, when I meet them, it's really nice. I don't know, one of like Thundercat, for instance, he really dug a couple of my records, and so I played on his last record, and he tells a lot of people about me, and that's really very, very cool of him and very sweet because yeah, this newer generation, I feel like this newer generation might key into a particular player, and I hear that guy and I go, well, shit, man. The truth is, and just I guess in my opinion, but I feel like the truth is, I already did that 20 years ago.
Mm.
Like I'm so far beyond that. You know what I mean? But it's it takes time and people need to kind of come up to speed little by little. So like I get it, but it's just a weird thing. Also with keyboard sounds. keyboard sounds today on new instruments are just really different. They're just
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of times I don't like that direction. I don't like it. I just don't like it. It's not that I'm old or something, but
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. I feel like this sound was influenced by, again, people who don't know anything, and that again, that's fine. But where are the masters, right? Where are the masters? Like there should be someone that's been around and is respected and can kind of help guide this, because I feel like it's going a little haywire. Um, 99% of the sounds on any new instrument I could never use. They're just useless to me. But I
Mm.
don't know, that's just me. That's just me. Maybe that's just my own particular thing, but it
Right.
bothers me a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't mean to sound like any kind of sour grapes, but sometimes that bugs me.
All right. I mean,
Yeah,
it kind of
just
makes
because
sense. Yeah, it kind of makes sense, in terms of what you said. There needs to be some kind of relevance and some kind of guidelines as to the whole direction of, what's going on in
of
terms of,
everything,
yeah, yeah,
of
yeah,
everything, because
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
I just feel like everything is kind of going crazy.
yeah.
Um, I mean, there are great young people. I love Lewis Cole from a band called Nowhere is awesome, and his girlfriend Genevieve. They do some wonderful music together. Whether it's Genevieve's group or Lewis's
Mm.
group or
Mm-hmm.
their groups together, Nowhere, they're awesome. And you know, I wouldn't change anything about what they do. And also, I mean, Thundercat does great stuff,
Yeah.
and there's good people out there. There's really talented, really really great people out there. But there's also a lot of people that don't have a clue what they're doing, and yet they're still influencing things. So I don't know about that. But
Amidst the remarkable tide of technological progress in the realm of music, we've seen a lot of advancements. It's been quite drastic over the years. We've seen musicians use environmental sensors to brain computer interfaces. So, have you, in your creative endeavors, ever embraced and harnessed the power of modern technology to shape your musical journey? And are you currently dabbling with something that's very modern in terms of technology?
well, like what type of technology are you referring to?
In terms of instrumentation, or in terms of modular synths, or in terms of
Mm,
sensor based technology for
yeah,
what you do.
yeah. I have not delved into anything AI at this point.
Yeah.
I don't really know hardly anything about it. It's intriguing because it
Yeah.
kind of knows it it's able to know almost everything that's ever existed. So that's an interesting thought. But it's only been used so far as really gimmicky things like, oh, make make so and so sing like this stupid song or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be a useful thing for sure, but I
Mm.
just haven't personally dived into it. I mean, I literally just downloaded or just made an account with Chat GBT yesterday just to see what it is, but like I haven't even done one thing on it. It's definitely interesting. It's definitely, I'm sure, a big part of the future. Instrument wise, yeah, I've got some really new and interesting, like I said, the nonlinear lab C15 and the expressive E Osmos are cutting edge expressive instruments. Um, they're like the Osmos whole point is to be more expressive than any other keyboard while maintaining a keyboard action,
Yeah.
right? So you
Yeah.
you know so you can wiggle the key side to side for a certain vibrato or certain other things. You can press it down, and then there's an after touch, which allows you to control other functions. And so that's really deep. It's all per note. So if you're holding a chord and then you press harder down on a C, that C can come out more, or the C can vibrato, or the C can do
Mm.
things. So it's
Yeah.
very cool. I'm just getting into that. um, so I don't know. We'll see where that takes me, but I'm sure it'll go somewhere cool because it's very, very interesting technology and sounds great. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always wondered. It might be a very basic question, but if I were to ask you, how can one master the art of, impactful and mesmerizing keyboard solos, right?
Hmm.
Trying to harness the instrument's potential to create a very spellbinding musical experience for captivating audiences with creative
Oh my God, I got
expression.
to figure out how to do that. I got to figure out how to do that myself.
But
I mean, yeah,
how would
that's a good.
you, yeah, how would you go about that? Like, how would you go about an
Well,
effective keyboard solo, for
you know
instance?
what? That's a good question. I don't really know. I feel like in music, ultimately, it comes down to the basic building blocks of music itself. Like basic rules, that eventually you can break or step outside of, maybe, but you know, harmony is harmony. Harmony just is what it is. G minor 7 is just a couple of
Yeah,
possibilities there, scale wise. And I also feel like chords come from scales too, right? So
yeah, yeah,
it's not the other way around. The chords come from the scale.
yeah,
So you just need to get to know those sounds. You got to know what Mixolydian sounds like. It's just your basic 7 chord. You got to know what Lydian sounds like with the flat 7, with the major 7. You got to know what Dorian, Frigid. Well, you got to know all those sounds. You got to know your melodic minor. And you have to know like when and how to use them. So that's just the notes part of it. Then, when it comes to synth, playing that stuff like on a synth, you need sounds that allow you to actually play them, right? You need a sound. First of all, I require certain things with keyboard sounds. Like I program all my sounds to have these basic things. It's got to be super touch sensitive.
mm,
So from the slightest touch, barely hear anything, to really hitting it, it's way loud.
yeah,
And I feel like every patch I've ever played on a synthesizer that out of the came out of the shop doesn't almost has no sensitivity. So
mm,
that's the first thing you have to do. And then another thing, in order to play lines, right, the sound has to have some type of attack. When you hit it, it needs to start all immediately. You can't have a,
yeah,
that's not going to work for playing lines. I mean, unless it's programmed a specific way, it's monophonic and blah, blah, maybe then. But basically, you want it to start like almost like an organ, like immediate on. And you kind of need an immediate off too, because you're moving, right? You're moving, you're going to play note, you're going to play a bunch of lines, and you're not
mm,
going to stay still. So you can't have it linger. So those are basic things that you have to have. And then from there, you know, you could just use your imagination and just come up with a sound that you feel like, okay, I can play this sound. But what bothers me are sounds that are basically stupid, sounds that have way too much filter opening and closing, depending on how you
yeah,
play it, way
yeah,
too much like resonance opening, like opening up and like all this stuff that's a little weird. I don't care for that. I want subtle changes. Like, so another thing I'll do it like on my Nord lead too. I'll have it so like if I play harder, I'll get a little vibrato, but it depends on how hard I hit the key as to how fast it is. So every key
mm,
gets its own little vibrato because I'm programming this morph destination of vibrato from velocity, right? So it's just
yeah,
one little thing I do to make it more expressive. So as I hit it harder, it's like it's vibrating harder,
vibrating, yeah,
but not
yeah,
extreme, not like it's just moving a little bit. So you just feel it, but you don't you hear it, but you don't hear it super strong. But I feel like those things, anything that helps you be more expressive is your friend. So I mean, whatever that means to you, it could be completely different to you than it is to me. But those are just certain little things that I need in order to play an electric keyboard, because electric keyboards are not inherently expressive. Even the ones called expressive could still be more expressive in a way, at least with velocity and volume and stuff like that. So that's the first thing I have to do whenever I touch an electric keyboard is I've got to get those things straightened out first. So all my sounds are like that. Like they barely play if if you barely touch them, and if you hit them, you can scale that back if you're going to play pretty consistently, but yeah, that's the general idea.
I really like how you broke things down in the simplest possible way to sort of
Yeah.
convey the
Yeah,
idea. Yeah, yeah,
that's kind of how I think about the basics, and then you can
yeah.
from that point you can do anything that you like or that you want. Um, um, you know, and it, you know, it'll take you somewhere. And if you
Okay.
have an evocative tone, that will really help you get inspired to play a better solo. So, I
Yeah,
mean, I think sound programming is really important. But if you pick just a lead sound on a synthesizer today, it's bound to be extremely buzzy and hyper bright with tons of oscillators all beating against each other. And it's just good in maybe one particular electronica way of playing a bright, buzzy melody, but you won't be able to really play it. It'll be literally impossible
yeah.
in my opinion, but that's how I feel about it. I actually gravitate much more towards darker sounds. I don't know if you noticed that, but like
Yeah, yeah.
a lot of my patches are very much darker. They're not generally not super bright. Once in a while, if I need some contrast, but I don't care for bright sounds very much.
All right.
And I rarely play stuff like brass and that sort of thing. Rarely do it, if ever. Once in a while, if I have to.
Hmm.
It's
Uh,
just not a creative thing. Brass is just,
yeah,
it sounds like one of the worst things to do on a synthesizer because it's just so, I don't know, it's so mundane. A lot of things are mundane on a synthesizer. If you call up an organ patch, mundane, general electric piano or piano sounds, garbage. It's just, I don't know. Synthesizers are, it's tough to get the right vibe and the right sounds out of them, but you
yeah,
you have to work with it. You have to
yeah,
work with it.
yeah, yeah. You have a very special Indian connection, and you have collaborated with Mr. Gino Banks. You have played on the iconic Matters of the Heart album with Sandeep Chota.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so you have a very special connection. You've visited India, you've performed in India,
Yeah,
you've played
yeah.
at the Blue Frog. It's at some point in time one of the
Hmm.
most noteworthy
Yeah,
venues in our country.
yeah.
So what were some of the key takeaways during your time in India, and how did you sort of enjoy your time here in India, working with all of these artists?
I mean, India is a very, very beautiful and special place, first of all. And truly I think it's lovely. And the people are lovely. I mean, Sandeep's a fantastic guy. I really admire his work, and
Yeah,
I he's an awesome guy. And yeah, I also worked with Arjit Singh. Is that his name?
yeah, Arijit
I
Singh.
can't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I worked with him too. Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, and I've always been treated so well by everybody I've ever worked for in India. It's been beautiful, and I liked hanging out there. And there's nothing in the world like the food. The food is I think one of the absolute greatest things that's ever been created, except for one little detail. I did get very ill one
oh
time.
no,
I had
okay.
one of the most delicious dinners I've ever had, and then
Yeah.
20 minutes later, I was so sick. I
Oh
mean,
no, okay.
it's just a matter of adjusting, to that
Yeah,
type of. I needed to take it a little bit more easy, but
yeah.
yeah, it's incredibly tasty, and the people have been so kind to me. So yeah, I really, it holds a very special place in my heart. India in general. I spent
And
time in Hyderabad,
okay,
Mumbai,
okay.
all over. I went to Goa.
Oh, all right, nice. So when are you
Yeah.
coming back to India? When can we have you in India?
I don't know. I have no plans. I have no plans to come back, but I'd love
You,
to.
you should,
If
yeah,
there's
you should
anything going on,
totally make plans in India. We would love to have the Scott Kinsey trio in India.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I'd love to do it. It's been a long time now. I haven't been to India,
yeah, yeah,
so it would be really fun to come back and you know,
yeah. I'd be happy to
maybe,
show you
maybe
around.
Gino again or oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I could do that.
where are you based out of?
I'm based out of Bangalore.
Okay, yeah, I've been there too. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so I can
Yeah, that's awesome.
I can show you some some really cool places in the southern part of India, which I'm quite well versed with, and we could
Mm-hmm.
try a lot of new kinds of food and also music. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. So what do you what like what's your musical like what are you into?
I am right now. My main focus area is podcasting. So music
Yeah.
podcasting is my major area of interest at this point. However,
Mhm.
I have been exposed and very interested in managing and working with a lot of Indian artists, Indian independent artists
Okay.
in the country. So I'm
Mhm.
currently working with some people like Amit Datta, who is a phenomenal music educator and a guitar player.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
also I'm so I work in terms of a lot of things with regard
Mhm.
to music campaigns, and then maybe planning out pan India tours and
Okay.
international tours as well. So I don't know
Yeah.
if you've heard of Max ZT from House of Waters.
What's his name?
Max ZT from House of Waters. They're an instrumental
Rings a
group.
bell, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah. So they had they in fact putting out a new album featuring Mike Stern and Antonio Sanchez on drums.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. So they
Pretty
have
cool.
Moto Fukushima on bass. They have Max on the dulcimer. Yeah, and
Oh,
yeah, yeah. They call House of
what did you
Waters.
call them?
House
House
of
of
Wa-
Water. I have
House of
heard of them.
Waters.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
I do know them. Yeah, I know
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I yeah,
yeah.
that's being that's their manager.
Guy Erskine.
what's their man?
Guy Erskine.
Guy Eckstein. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. That's
yeah.
his project. Right, right,
Yeah,
right, right.
yeah, yeah. So while
Yeah.
they were in India, I was helping them out with some shows and things like that.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
yeah, yeah, and I'm also working with the Alfredo Rodriguez trio, who are
Hmm.
coming down to India sometime in November. So I'm trying to sort of curate a couple of shows for them in the country.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Awesome, man. Well, very,
yeah,
very cool.
yeah. But apart from that, like I'm also a singer. I have
Hmm.
a blues and funk band called Thai Southern Blues. And
Oh,
performance has
nice.
definitely taken a backseat because, I've been very inquisitive and, interested in learning a lot of new things, like right from podcasting and talking to you people, connecting with you people, networking, because there are numerous possibilities in this little realm, right? So we can
Hmm.
dabble with a couple of different areas, and of course like managing artists and networking, PR
Yeah.
relations, and things like that really caught my interest. So I've been majorly focusing on music podcasting, and Stalwarts of Music is like my main area of interest at this point in time. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's
And
excellent. That's excellent.
yeah, in fact, Mr. Jimmy Haslip was kind enough to connect the two of us. This couldn't have happened
Hmm.
without his support and help. Yeah.
Very cool. I love Jimmy. Yeah, Jimmy's
Mm.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So, in the interest of time, I'd like to come to the last part of our agenda, which is
Hmm.
the rapid fire. Yeah. So, I have a couple of interesting, very short questions. You can't think too much, but you can be as spontaneous as you want to be with the answers. So, shall we do
Okay.
that? Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah, my first question for you: what is that one song that always makes you cry?
Um, hmm. there's been some Frank Sinatra tunes that would affect me emotionally when I heard them. I don't I don't remember exactly what they are because I had them on this video, this VHS tape, and I would just put it in sometimes and watch this program. And the next thing I know, I found myself tearing up.
Okay.
Like I think when Frank sings a ballad, there's something really special about that because he maintains his masculinity, but yet it's still tender. But it's just this beautiful combination of like what it is to be a man, but also be like sensitive and like you know what I mean. Uh,
Yeah.
Hearing Frank sing a ballad is like unbelievable to me. So I think that would be.
Yeah.
Um, I think I was very. I think one of the pieces was maybe Nancy with the smiling face. Maybe that was one of them. I think maybe
All right. Right.
I'm not sure.
On the contrary, what is your favorite guilty pleasure song?
Guilty pleasure song?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Probably maybe something by Blondie, you know.
Okay.
I was I was kind of dug Blondie.
All right.
So like maybe, Heart of Glass or one of those tunes from Blondie I kind of always dug.
Right on. Uh, if you had the chance to put together an all-star jazz rock fusion band, who'd be in it?
Hmm, who'd be in it? That's a good question. They have to be alive now, right?
No, it can be people from any era. You can feel
Oh,
free to
really?
pick. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, it was always my dream to work with Miles Davis, and I never got to, so Miles would have to be um right there. And also Wayne Shorter. I mean,
yeah.
so Miles and Wayne should be in there for sure. Bass players, I don't know. I'm not sure who the bass player should be. Um, I mean, Hadrian Furrow is a very he can kind of play anything. So I think Hadrian, and then on drums probably Girgo. I don't know. Those are my normal guys, and they're my
Yeah,
favorites.
yeah,
Or Novak is great. Both of those guys are great.
right. I have one last question for you, which is a
Mhm.
custom in all of my interviews, and let's see how you answer this. Down in the distant horizon, what would you like to be remembered as?
Oh, like okay. Uh That's a that's a that's a question I've literally never thought about. Because my whole life I've always been the youngest guy in every band I've been in.
Okay.
And of course, that's changed in the last 10 years. And
Right.
now I'm often the oldest guy in the band. And
Yeah.
yeah, and that's just how things go, right? So I never really stopped to think about, well, how do you want to be remembered? I guess um definitely as a keyboard player, I hope as a good keyboard player who had something of his own to offer. Um, and I mean, as a decent person too, I hope, I guess that's kind of the main gist of it. I don't know.
Great answer for a closure. So this interview will be additionally aired on Big FM Shillong and Big FM Aizawl, two incredible radio stations in the northeastern part of India, and it will shortly be available in due time in my YouTube channel, Aditya Veera 1994, and also will be available on all major audio streaming platforms for consumption. So I'll be sure to share the links once the interview is out.
Okay. I played in Iswell.
Oh, is it? Okay. All right.
Yeah, some years
Interesting.
ago. We did a gig there. It was really interesting. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Very, very interesting. So I'm sure people of Azol would be looking forward to hearing you on the radio now.
I,
Yeah,
I hope so. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Well, it's been
So
a pleasure, really. It's been enjoyable.
it's been an incredible privilege and an honor having you on the show. Thank you so much for taking time out and giving such valuable insights. And yeah, it was a very nice session that we had. Thank you so much once again, and please do
My
stay in
pleasure.
touch. I would love to
Yeah.
stay in touch with you in whatever capacity you
Okay.
can. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have we're connected on IG and stuff, and so
yeah,
it's very
certainly,
easy.
certainly.
All right.
All right then.
Beautiful.
You have a great Saturday.
All right, you too. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.